jab, hook, kick. This was the best point of the workout, when her muscles were sore but not yet stinging, and energy flowed through her, out of her, each time her fists and feet connected with the heavy bag. Helen breathed hard, no longer bothered by the smell of sweat and disinfectant that hit her as soon as she entered Joe's gym. Sick kick, knee to groin. Joe was across the room, working with the real fighters. The young guy with cornrows, the older tattooed guy, and the South Asian girl who had massive built-up shoulders and kept her hair shaved on the sides, the rest tied in a short ponytail. Helen didn't know their names or what they did when they weren't training. She'd only crossed paths once with any of them outside the gym. That time she saw the girl at the Key Food, talking on her cell in a soft, airy voice that seemed left over from some previous life. Helen had turned down the produce aisle, slipping away before she could be seen. She worked on a move Joe had taught her last week: yank the attacker's head down, then raise your knee in a kick, until her arms burned and her knees ached. She wiped her arm across her forehead and ran through the series again. Last winter, she'd seen a flyer on Main Street: intense cardio, 5:30 a.m., Roosevelt Gym. The next morning, she dragged herself out of bed. Who knows? She told Tom. Maybe I'll meet some people. She went over to the high school, only to find herself in a class with people she already knew, by sight at least, from all the usual places: the playground, the school drop-offs, the organic bakery where everyone got their coffee. There was the mom who'd house-trained her chickens, which laid eggs on the couch and in the laundry basket. There was a man who spoke to his 2-year-old daughter only in French, and to everyone else in a vaguely European accent, though it turned out he'd been born and raised in Michigan. And there was a pair of earnest young journalists who drove a great distance to their NPR jobs and who'd been introduced to her, more than once, as the town's public radio power couple. Helen didn't really mind any of those people. She even liked the radio couple. But all of them, and many others, liked to bring their kids to the class, despite the early hour. The babies would sleep in their convertible car seats, but the toddlers and bigger kids would spend the hour spiraling around the gym, chasing and shoving and tackling each other, until they collapsed, hungry and on the verge of meltdowns. During the floor exercises, she had to stay on guard against the 4-year-old who liked to steal his dad's weights and let them drop near other people's mats. She spent most of her day with her own children. She needed time to herself, time when she could burn off energy. After a few weeks, she told Joe she was dropping out. "I've always been a runner," she said. "Maybe I'm not cut out for group classes." He'd looked her over, thought about it, and gave her the address of his own gym. Now, as often as she could, she'd drop the girls off at preschool and then head over to his one-room studio, reachable by an exterior stairwell behind a storefront on Main. In the group class, Joe had radiated warmth, with a positivity that seemed well-intentioned but somehow off. In his gym, he seemed like a different person. Here, he was quiet and intense, though the way he interacted with everyone, his deliberate speech, his long silences, made her think this was no less of a performance. Even after all the time she'd spent in the gym these last few months, she knew almost nothing about him, and he knew almost nothing about her. But there were days, like today, when she thought they understood each other. Joe came up to her on his way back from the cooler. "You're doing it wrong," he said. Helen looked up at him in the mirror. He was dressed in heavy sweatpants and the knit cap he'd worn all summer. He lifted her right arm. "Look," he said, "you took the skin off." She had been working on a left punch, followed by a right elbow. He showed her how to hit the bag without skinning herself, then moved on to the guy with the cornrows. She had a few minutes left. She did her push-ups and stretches and went back to the bag for a last round of punches and kicks, knowing she would pay for that later. She could feel it already, in her knees and her shins. But it felt so good to push herself, to see how far she could go, to exert a decisive force. Joe was watching her. He gave her what, for him, passed as a smile. "Better," he said. "Keep breathing." Helen caught a glimpse of her face in the mirror and remembered what the cashier in the organic bakery had said last year.